All right, all right. Here we go. False start on the first recording of the podcast, but we're back at it here with more people, more
We
problems.
got some laughter in the background. We're ready to go with some fun
Natural
start.
smiles to begin with as we
Yeah.
open the clip because we're laughing a little bit. Okay, so back at you here with your host, Chelsea and Britt.
Woo,
Beautiful
hi.
host, Britt. Look at her. Looks like she has short hair, but no, she's tucked
Ready?
it into her
Oh,
hoodie.
shit.
Yeah.
I just flicked my pod out, my AirPod. Damn.
I thought you said your pot. And I'm like, what? Are we smoking on this episode? I didn't
No,
realize.
my ear.
I flicked my pot out. Okay, we're not restarting for that, guys. You're just gonna have
No,
to deal with it.
we can.
She's retucking. She's retucking it, but she's pissed that I had her untuck her hair. Anyways, beautiful, short, long, doesn't matter. So here we are again. Great episode in store for you today. Linking, as they always do, to other episodes and other topics we've discussed before. We're going to talk about resourcefulness versus creativity. And I'm going to let Britt lean in here with an example because I think she's got a good one that she wants to share on this one.
Well, and I'll preface this with the fact that as I was doing research for this episode, I went into it with one thought, which over the past 14 years, I've come to realize and believed that resourcefulness and creativity were the same thing. And so the intention of this podcast was kind of to challenge the way of thinking and I guess to share our opinion on that. And in researching, I realized that that might not be the case. So today we're going to discuss that on whether or not, hopefully we come out with an opinion at the end, but we'll use our brains to go. Anyways, my example is this, and I might have shared it before, but I'm going to go in more depth. I, like many things on this podcast that I start with, I grew up believing that creativity was something you either had or you didn't have. And it was probably because I grew up with a very creative mother who could just envision things in her brain. She had a sewing company. She was a seamstress, but she was more of a creator. She did the top figure skating, dance outfits, gymnast for Canada.
Made your prom dress?
Oh yeah, she could do anything. And she could just picture it in her head, build a pattern, sew it, beat it, make it, and it was done. And I was in such awe of the creativity of creating something that was never there in your own head. I was like, that is creativity, and I do not have that.
Kudos to mothers. Kudos to mothers. And I was just going to plug in, you want to talk about mothers. Yeah. Anyway, so
we love white chicks.
Yeah.
If you haven't watched it lately,
the movie.
It's a good one.
Movie,
yes.
Obviously.
Jeez, gonna get canceled. So back to this example, I really thought I wasn't. And I was a couple of years, probably 2 or 3 years into my career at Shopify. And we had an exec offsite and we were there and we started talking about resourcefulness because it was one of our cultural values. And we were iterating on the topic of like, what does it mean to be resourceful? We know we need it. And we were talking about it in the frame of mind, which is we need people to problem solve and build every day. Build something that is better tomorrow than what it is today. Be smarter tomorrow. Be more strategic, be more creative than what it is today. And I started struggling with that because I was like, well, some people are creative and some people aren't. So we can't bucket that. And the conversation evolved to like, what is creativity? And we started to talk about the nuances of it. Like, are people made with it or are they not? And it went from that to information acquisition, the ability to acquire information from multiple sources of insights, whether that's from another human, from a book, from a podcast, from white papers and research, from experiencing something and actually like tangibly touching it and knowing how it works and taking all of that in. And is creativity really the artistry of just like a light bulb moment? Or is it more so an evolution of thinking and acquiring all this information, connecting the dots between them and saying, okay, well, now I've seen this, this, and this. Well, I think there's a new possibility that is just a little iteration, or maybe not even iteration, but rather the connecting of two. And once I do that, that's creativity. And as funny as it sounds, that was my light bulb moment of, oh shit, like I'm creative.
Now you're giving me a light bulb moment for a second.
I know.
I just say to you, I'm just resourceful. Yeah. I'm not creative. I'm like,
so this was the prelim to the, I know. And this is why it's so interesting because when you start to frame it like that, when you think about all the people you know and their creative moments, did they all of a sudden just like, oh, I'm creative, I'm just going to create a car? No, there was step
Like they
functions,
saw
there was
different things.
connections of things, there was machines before
Sure.
that, there was wheels that took like wheelbarrows that
Pinterest.
moved things. Yeah, there's so many things. And once you can connect it, your brain can do pattern recognition and start to create new. And what I've learned is that this is called combinational creativity. It's taking ideas from multiple sources to create something new or potentially novel as a result of combining them. And most moments of creativity are caused through this. And the reason why I wanted to start with this is I'm sure there's a lot of people listening to this thinking, I'm either really creative or I'm not. It's a pretty binary thought. And I actually think everyone is creative. They're not creative in the same skills, they're not creative in the same industries, but they are creative if they are really good at information acquisition. And that is the actual skill. Be curious. Voracious with your hunger to learn more knowledge. Because if you are, I really do see it like a circuit board of electricity surging between them. And all of a sudden, a new surge is created. And you're like, okay, new possibility. And when I think about Shopify, we did a lot of things very differently. And a lot of people would say that our talent approach and our culture approach to building a company and running it was very creative. I never thought of it as creative. I thought of it as innovative because I was like, well, we're connecting. I'm seeking out knowledge of what everyone else has done. You know what I was doing? I was seeking out their failures more than their successes so that I
Right.
could utilize it. I definitely did other aspects of creativity because there's also one that's called exploratory, that's the right word, creativity, where you take out like the foundational elements or restraints within something and you think outside the box. I did that a lot. I would say like, I'm going to learn everything about compensation, total rewards. And then I would take out elements of like, well, what about if we didn't have this? What about if we didn't have a budget? What about if we didn't have to do a variable? What about if we actually gave people 100% of the optionality of how they want to get paid? Like, what if? But I had to know all of the insights and research before that. So I had information acquisition first to then to be able to evolve. Turns out, I think it's a skill that everyone can build. And that to me is like, mind blowing, so exciting. It's the whole growth mindset of you're not either or, you have the potential. And so that's my story on creativity. But then I actually will pause here and ask you, Chelsea, what do you think? Is creativity and resourcefulness then? And maybe we define resourcefulness, but do you think it's the same thing?
No, I still think that they're two different things, but I think that what I would have thought of myself, for example, as being a very resourceful person, because I think you do have the constraints, like think of people in budget situations. Oh, the budget's getting slashed by 30%. What can you do with what you have now? I mean, there's people who are incredibly resourceful to figure out where you can minimize costs, where you can be more efficient, where you can change your processes, your procedures and whatnot, where you can stop doing certain things that aren't effective anymore. Super resourceful. I would put myself in that bucket all day long. Now, when we started talking about this, I was like, I'm not creative. I was thinking like people like your mother, my sister,
Yeah.
people who make all these things. I mean, like I've told you about this before. Someone reaches out and says, oh, we've got some leftover laminate flooring, like a box full. I think your mom offered it to me. Do you think your mom would want to have that for anything? And I'm like, yeah, let me ask her. She makes door signs out of it. Like
And they're gorgeous.
she paints them. She uses her little Cricut. She puts she could do it all. My sister, the same thing, right? Very creative. I'm like, I don't have a flipping bone in my body that says I can do that.
So I actually 100% agree that they're very creative, but I also think this makes me think of just an important factor to creativity, which is desire and interest. Like as much as I love receiving the gifts from your mom and like receiving my prom dress from my mom, I have no desire to dig into how something is sewn or created. I have no motivation of that. Whereas like for me, if you talk about personal style, like I spend hours looking at different like influencers, different websites of clothing, piecing together outfits. I really enjoy it.
Yeah.
Like I love looking at clothing and personal style. I love like really people representing themselves. It's like I love costumes. I love makeup. I feel like it's so,
So you're
exciting.
shifting your thought, your definition of like creativity, or not shifting. It's just, it's not the same as what we would traditionally think of
Yeah.
in terms of creating products or creating
Well,
pieces of
I guess it's
art or whatever.
foundational ingredients to be able to be creative in a space is I think you need to be interested and have a desire to be curious and learn about something. And so for you, actually putting it back on you, you saying, oh, I'm not creative like my mom, my sister. I agree. You're not like, nor am I like my mom. But I do think you are extremely creative within the business strategy, within like people, within relationships, within, like
Instagram memes.
yeah, I mean, there you go. Your humor. Like there is so many things that
Oh,
you
that's
are creative
interesting.
on, but I think we have to reframe once again, just like everything else, of like it's not one area. And I think creative displays of like artistry and stuff is very common. So we always think,
Right.
oh, that's it, but it's
That
so many
box.
others.
That's really interesting. I actually never would have thought about that. You always think of the very traditional
Yeah.
creativity in terms of art and but I still even agree with you in terms of personal style, makeup. I mean, that is all artistry, but it's fair to say like there's other things that you can consider to be
Cooking.
creative. Cooking, in business strategy, in humor, like
Yeah.
crafting
Writing. Like
amazing
Shannon,
jokes,
the other podcast, like I think she's
storytelling.
one of the most creative people.
Oh yeah.
Would she consider herself creative, resourceful? Like what category of creative? I don't know. It'd be an interesting question.
Yeah, maybe there's
I
different
would consider
categories.
that. But going back to resourcefulness versus creativity. Okay. So the way that I read and kind of researched this was that resourcefulness is defined as creating something with the resources you have confined, like the
Right.
constraints you have.
Yeah.
And so the budget example you gave is a really good one. Or, we want to create more engagement in the company, but we can only do it on this day with this amount of money. How do you then become resourceful to create something?
Yeah.
You could think about it in any genre, though, really. Whereas
Sure.
creativity really, I think, is built with no constraints.
Yeah,
So you
bust
can
those
really
down.
think, yeah. But
So,
then,
like,
okay,
whatever your heart desires, whatever you can think of, flip it and see like where you can go with it.
but I guess the question for me is like, isn't there always constraints in
I
everything
know.
you do?
I
And
was
okay,
just going
so
to say that too. I was going
so
to
this
say,
is my
when is
thought
that ever the
process.
case?
Well, I think creativity is the act of doing like the thought bubbles of exploring, of removing everything. But when you wanted to take something creative and bring it to the real world,
Like
I
the
think that's where
execution.
you like, yeah, use resourcefulness to put it within the constraints of whatever you're doing.
Right. So I think we're talking about when we're talking about constraints, and there's always possibly being constraints, but are you saying then that creativity is there are no constraints to the thinking, but is that so when we talk about execution?
I think this is the messy part is that when we talk about creativity, everyone thinks it's the conception of the idea, it's the creation of it, then it's the implementation. Whereas when you break it down and research resourcefulness versus creativity, the way that the research shows it is that creativity is the transformational ideas of creativity, it's the combinational creativity, it's the exploratory creativity. So it's the act of kind of thinking of the idea of the potential, it's whether or not it's possible, but then resourcefulness is how you take it from creativity to implementation. And so
Okay.
it's putting it within the constraints. And so an example of that would probably be, hack days. A lot of companies have started to do them, but early on, it was a very creative notion of taking a day every quarter where your employees wouldn't work on their normal jobs. They would instead work on whatever they wanted that related to the company, the mission, with whoever they wanted in the company, and then they would present a new idea. So, what we were doing was we were ignoring fundamental, foundational elements of how a business is run. You don't work on your teams. You don't work on your role itself. As a talent leader, I could work on a product. I could go and work with our merchants for a day. I could decide what I wanted to do, but it was to create creativity through a creative solution. But then we had to think about what are the constraints of this? Well, we still had to, build our product, serve our merchants. We had to make sure nothing was down. So there was constraints, a budget of running a company, I guess, as well. There was constraints that we needed to be resourceful about, and we needed to adjust based on that to actually implement the hack days. And so I don't know. I hope that's making sense, but I think there's the creative element of what you want. And then the resourcefulness is like the implementation. But I also think they're very, very blurry. And I think that in many cases, resourcefulness can be creative
Mhm.
and creativity can, I guess I'm talking in circles. I don't know.
No, I think you're doing a good job. I think there is 100% can be a blurred line, but I think you've done a good job of defining the idea process and kind of the lack of having a bubble around the aspect of creativity versus maybe more so having, like, let's think of like I was going to say Game of Thrones. No, what's that one there with the Jennifer Lawrence there? What's
Oh, Hunger Games.
Hunger, and they have the dome, right?
Yeah,
Stuck in the
that's the
dome.
constraint.
That's the constraint. And
It's
then you
true
can't
though.
get out of it, right?
Yeah, I mean, and that's the hard thing because I think all creativity has constraints. I just think like life does. So to ignore them is like it's weird, and that's why it does overlap. But regardless of that, for 1 second, I do want to rewind and say like, why does it matter that one, everyone can be creative, and two, why do we even want to be creative? And so I guess I'm curious for you now, thinking like you are creative, Chelsea, although you didn't before. Like, what does that open up for you? And what does it even matter?
Hmm. Well, let me think about it this way because you've given me a little bit of a different perspective to think about. No, I don't feel like I have that traditional creativity in terms of the art sense, which, so that was my preconceived notion, which we've just shot down. Okay, so great. So, say my creativity lens is maybe it is along the lines of storytelling and, personal connections and humor, for example. Why does that matter, or why does it has it mattered for me? Well, it's actually helped me in a lot of really, really difficult situations to navigate situations with a little bit more lightness, where it might have been very, very difficult otherwise, or it's allowed me to build connections with individuals quickly, by using humor and by using
But don't you also think, like, okay, to challenge you, let's go back to an example from the Failing Forward podcast where you talked
okay,
about, I think it was performance reviews, or was it performance reviews? What were you talking about?
succession planning.
That was it, succession planning, and how you failed and learned and evolved.
Hmm.
Do you think you can be creative within that space?
In terms of dealing with the failure, or in terms of
In building of how you want, or do you like, maybe I don't know if this is
oh,
a good example, but I just want to put it in a very like basic terms for people, because I think even as you describe humor and all these things, it's these elusive ones of like, oh, I can be creative here because it's all in it. Whereas I think you can be creative in all aspects of what you are building. And so
mhm,
whether it's, a meal where you're like, I thought I had to cook it in the stove. Let's try cooking it outside on a wildfire or the air fryer. Like
yeah.
removing, like you can try new things to create alternative new realities or new outcomes. That is creativity. But putting it in like the business sense, succession planning. I'm sure you read, you researched, you acquired a lot of information
Mhm.
about how succession should be done, how it has been done, the strengths of it, the pitfalls, what could happen. You probably talked to people, got insights. You also built something and got feedback that you
Mhm.
failed at it and need to evolve it.
Yep.
Well, in the end, do you feel like you created something that wasn't there before? Something new, something innovative?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it was completely turned on its head from what we'd done previously. And we decided that this couldn't be a paper exercise where we're all responding individually and not actually having the dialogue. It has to be all of us together, thinking together, having,
Don't you think though
exchanges.
then that that was a creative build that you were able to execute?
Yeah, I mean it was. I think when you put it that way, it absolutely was. We changed it completely. We changed what the conversation was going to be. We set people up to be able to have those conversations where they weren't there before. So I think it's hard to take it and add that
But
kind of
but
title
this
to
is
it
why
maybe.
it's so important, because I think what you did there was transformational creativity. You were creating new ideas within a given space. Maybe it was actually combinational because you connected a few of them too. Like you
Mhm.
connected old ideas with new ideas, etc. So there's a few, but it was
Sure.
creativity. You created something
Oh, look at
that
that.
was unique, that was innovative, that was done in a new way that wasn't previously possible.
Mm-hmm.
And you did that through data acquisition, through risk taking,
Mm-hmm.
through failure. Like these are all really important ingredients to creativity. But
Right.
I think we can all do it in all aspects. And the reason why you want to actually talk about it in this way, in my opinion, or else to build this skill set is creativity is what makes people and companies push past their competitors.
Right.
It makes the previously impossible possible with a new way of doing something. And so I think you want to create that skill set and behavior among all your people, and you want to encourage it in your environment. And by the way, not in all environments will, because some are very risk averse. Some don't want failures. And so guess what? You're not going to get creativity. You're not going to get people thinking outside the box because those other things have to happen to get there. And
Right.
so I think we talk about, more people, more problems, the epitome of until your company is run by robots, like you got to deal with people.
Mm-hmm.
I would highly, highly encourage to reframe what creativity is and teach people that it's possible within everyone. And then talk about how you do that and how, like, give some real examples of it's every day. There's going to be some major big ones. Like, SpaceX is a massive creative, like, a great example of it because people are going to go to the moon and they're already like evolving, but every spaceship fails at a certain point. And then they create a new version of it. They have new
Yeah.
possibilities, but it's the most creative endeavor. But there's little mini moments that we all have all the time.
Yeah. I think that really puts it into perspective in terms of it's not always going to be the brand new creation of something, and you can be building on something. And I think let's say, for example, someone invented mascara. And we're like, mascara, this is great. Someone invented mascara. It's absolutely amazing. Then someone else came along and said, hey, whenever I go in the pool, my mascara runs down my face and that sucks. And then that person went, why don't we get waterproof mascara? And that creative, right? Like it's
Yeah.
creative. It's been built on another idea or another product. We
Like
can't deny it.
90% is. Yeah, but 90% is. There was this great quote. Oh, I didn't write it down, but essentially it was saying like the biggest lie around creativity is that it's not plagiarism just played over and over again, with the thought being that it really is taking past ideas and with a new twist. So it feels like plagiarism, but it's not because it's novel. It has some little extra.
But that's it, right? So, like, for anyone to deny the fact that, well, hey, that's not original thought, what actually is original thought apart from, maybe the first invention of the light bulb, for example, although that probably went through a million failures before you actually got to it.
And
Was
also
that
a million connecting of the dots. There was other things that then allowed for it.
That's what I'm actually finding is really cool about this is what you're saying. It's the connecting of the dots. It's the data gathering. It's the data gathering. It's the putting of the pieces together. So, like, for example, could I be incredibly creative in the traditional sense of the word in terms of making Christmas decorations? That if I spent 2 hours a day on Pinterest looking at all those things, bet you I could, right?
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
want to. I'm the same
Yeah.
as you. I have zero desire to do that. I'd rather surf Instagram, and I know that's super sad. Or I'll play my Wordle and stuff like
Yeah.
that. But that's how I do my downtime. But I probably could be super creative if I actually was putting together all those data points and going, oh yeah, I'll probably do that as well too. But I don't spend my time on that. So for me, maybe it's going through my Instagram memes and then retelling those jokes to my friends, and they love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
With a slight twist on it that's more personal to you and
yeah,
like
more
funny.
personal and like
yeah.
probably
It makes me
raunchier.
realize that creativity and innovation, I think, are actually also another one that's so similar because I think creativity is actually the biggest pre to innovation. Like I don't think you can have innovation without creativity, and maybe you can't have creativity without resourcefulness. Like maybe it actually is
Like a
that
continuum
type of
almost.
progression. Yeah. Like so it's so funny because it reminds me of a story. So at Shopify, like first year there, we were like, okay, we got to come up with our culture values. And one of them was we weren't really saying it was a value, but we kept talking about resourcefulness. And we had this picture and it was like, it was a meme, how to draw an owl. And then it was like draw two circles. And then the next one was, now draw the fucking owl. It was like, figure it out. Like whatever it looks like, figure it out. And we were teaching people that day in and day out because we were a startup. We didn't have enough people or skills or money or anything. So we had to be scrappy. We had to use what we had, but it was completely within our constraints. We had to dig deeper. We had to try new things, but that led then to creativity. And so as a company and how we articulated and communicated our culture was first resourcefulness, because everyone can think about
You need
resourcefulness
that
as
base.
approachability. Yeah.
You
And just
have
like
to.
I could be resourceful. Yeah. Okay. Let's think about it.
Absolutely.
But then that progressed to creativity. And what was creativity? And can everyone be creative? And so we started talking a lot about what was creativity and what did we expect and how could you do it? And we talked a lot about information acquisition because everyone can acquire information. That is something you can control. But that ability to think more, how it connects, I would vary that not everyone can do that. And so you do need special skills, brain power, strategy, interest, risk taking, ability to fail and learn, growth mindset, all these things. But we did talk about the importance of it and why we are okay with all those things. And it really helped be innovative and continue to build and grow and outpace competitors.
And I think that's a really great example of, continue to have that discussion about resourcefulness. Can you have the creativity without first having the resourcefulness? Are we looking at a continuum here? And I probably have these eye roll moments all the time at work when, say, I review something and you get various acronyms for certain things, especially when you're in the federal government, right?
Good old acronyms.
The old acronyms for the projects or the charities or for a department name or whatever. And people are like, well, I don't know what that stands for. I'm not sure. Or I don't know what that translation is in French. And my first, it's like fingernails down a chalkboard. I want to go, we have an intranet that has literally everything. You could just search and then you can press it in French, like any Government of Canada website. You can put it into French. Your first thought, instead of asking your boss or even asking your colleague, well, they'll go there first before you go to your boss, is you should just put it in that little search engine. You'll find it right away. And it kind of drives me a little bit batty. And we've got all these resources and all these abilities to find information. And oftentimes, even, junior and even more senior employees will go, yeah, I don't know what that is. And I'm like, did you even try?
Yeah.
Did you try?
I know this feeling all too well.
It's painful.
And I mean, this is the cool thing about so many of the topics we talk about, specifically being these today around resourcefulness and creativity, is you as an individual have all of the power and ability to take control and to lean into this. But there's a lot of things in society that has taught us not to. I mean, I think the opposite of resourcefulness is entitlement. I should just be fed all of the information.
Oh, God,
I should get told everything. I deserve this. Whereas, and maybe it's not the opposite, but I do think people need to pause and go, no, what do I get to do to take control to move my life forward? And it's not just career, it's every aspect. I can go out and research. I can go out and ask anyone to get information. I could read a book. I could do this. Think about what is available to you to take control and take power over it. And I think that is that linear then to go creativity, same thing. And innovation, same thing.
It's like you said with those data points, right? I can look back in, my past experiences over the last year, several years and go, okay, I remember someone said this and that person said that and that person said that. And I've just heard this. Okay, so what does that all mean? Where can I link that up to do something with this information? And I talk to some of my reports in that at work pretty often going, I don't need to tell you that is your job. When you hear it, you know that that's your job. You shouldn't need me to tell you it. And you should remember that other part of your job that kind of relates to this. You should probably go and proactively doing that. You should be taking all those different data points along the way. At least we hope people are doing that and going, okay, if I've changed that here, well, I'll need to change that here. Ooh, that might have an impact on this. Better figure that one out. Oh, there's a bit of a problem. Not going to go straight to my boss about it. I'm going to try and
Yeah.
figure something out that's going to work for this. And then maybe I'll
Yeah.
get a final decision.
You're making me realize the difference between resourcefulness and creativity. I think resourcefulness is a lot safer to implement because you're acting so much within the confinements and constraints that you might be doing it in a new way, but you're really utilizing what you have.
Mhm.
Whereas creativity takes more risk of the unknown and potential new outcomes. Like I think that there is a big risk factor that isn't in resourcefulness that
Yeah.
comes with creativity. And
People are
so
scared too.
it's a
People
lot
are
scary.
scared.
Yeah.
You have to
Yeah.
put yourself out there to go, no one's given me any parameters. This
Well,
might
think how hard
sound,
it is even to just think like, okay, everyone walks a certain way. I'm going to start walking a new way
I'm going to skip.
because
I'm
I
going to
believe
skip.
this. Like everyone's going to, yeah, if skipping, everyone's going to look at you funny. You're doing it different.
Yeah. Well, like it's so true, right? So you have to have that fear of no judgment or being able to accept judgment possibly in those situations. The
This makes me
feel of,
think of the first person on a bike. Like, what did everyone think when they saw this person on a
oh
bike?
my God, like
Like,
absolutely insanity, right? Like
yeah,
what is this contraption that you
you got to
got
be
your
brave.
body on? But
Yeah.
you do have to have that element of bravery, and you have to have that ability to go, no one's told me what to do. I could go present this. They could think it's batshit crazy. But again, with the psychological safety of it as well, maybe they'll be open to hearing this, or maybe this will spurn into, okay, but maybe not exactly that, but slightly this way
Yeah.
with that.
That's that
You know what
whole
I
like
mean?
strong opinions weekly held. Like go in with a strong opinion about your creative, innovative approach, but hold them weekly in the sense that if people have feedback or tweaks, that you're willing to
Let's
listen
adjust
and
it.
evolve it because that's
Ooh,
even
I like that.
more creative.
I like that term, strong opinions weekly held. And people who will only stick by what they've come to the table with, those people will always have problems. And I probably used to be a person of that nature. No, like this is amazing. Like, how are you guys not seeing this?
Yeah.
And you can't see beyond your own creativity or your own little bubble that you've put this in. And this is the way, right?
Yeah.
People more senior to you or colleagues or people underneath you might go like, that's fucking insane. Like, like I think maybe we should have an adjustment to that. You're not open to it. Not open, totally rigid, no growth mindset. Boom.
Yeah. Well, it has so much to do with what people are willing to accept and be open to in that moment. And it reminds me like so many times throughout my career or life, I've, got to an idea or a thought or like, this is, if we could just do it this way, the outcome would be this. And I want to try it. But people around me might like the problem might not be ripe enough for them to want to evoke that same creative new solve. And so I have to stop and pace myself for everyone to get to the same ripeness as me and then
Yeah.
be willing to do it. And so like there's nuances to all of this. There's nuances to when is it appropriate to take the risk?
Mm,
When how strong opinion do I have or do I hold it
yeah.
weekly? Like there's so many nuances to it, but I think if everyone today hopefully listening to this goes, I can be creative. I have the opportunity to, and what it takes is gathering information, it's taking a risk, it's being brave, it's thinking outside the box. But
Yep.
I have that ability. And it's not just this one way of being creativity, such as artistic
Yep.
unison. You can bring it to all ways of life. I think that's amazing. I would love that to be the case.
And I think to your point about the creativity, sometimes there's a time and a place. Sometimes there's a time and a place to be experimental and to really go outside the box. And sometimes you have to recognize this might not be the time. Let's say, for example, government of Canada or maybe a lot of companies are experiencing this massive budgetary constraints. Now, this is definitely a time to be resourceful. Absolutely. You're doing a lot with the little that you have, or you're shedding, or you're cutting, or you're, squeezing, whatever the case may be. Is this a time to go
Yeah.
nutso in terms of massive risk taking and creativity? Maybe, but also maybe not. So you
Yeah, it
need to look and
completely
see at
depends
what
on
the
context. You're
receptivity.
right.
You need to look at that receptivity to be able to do that. I would never want to constrain someone's creativity because some of their creativity, like we said, doesn't necessarily mean that includes the execution or the ability to execute. Maybe you should continue to always have it, sometimes knowing that you can execute at that point in time.
Yeah. Keep
Maybe
it
the
in the
point in
back
time
pocket.
to execute is later, in 2 years,
Yeah.
in 3 years, whatever the case may be. But maybe continue to spawn the ideas. But I definitely think that there's times when it's go full blown on it. And there's times where you need to understand some of the environmental context as well, and the ability to absorb that, even
Yeah.
with a lot of other pressures, that execution of your
Well, if you
creativity
think
might
about
not be
it,
a possibility.
like industrial revolution, new machinery, automobiles are coming out. Like, do you think the world had the infrastructure for cars to drive around?
Oh,
Like, do you
absolutely
think
not.
the environment was ready? Was the constraints there? Like, I'm sure like there was an ebb and flow that now we look back and we never think about because we all drive cars.
Mhm.
But at that time, there was a creative creation and innovation, but it probably took a lot of time to actually get them on the road, to
Yeah.
build roads, sorry,
Yeah.
to build the infrastructure. And so I think that's what we're saying. It's like, be really creative, think outside the box, whether it's, combination creation, creativity, where you're thinking of a bunch of other ways and now it's connecting to create something new, or transformational, however you do it. Think of it, always explore it, but then really think about the constraints of which you can implement at which time.
Yeah.
But we can all be creative. I believe that.
We can all do it. And I think we should be creative during wine time.
Okay. See you in a
I'm
sec.
always creative in wine time.
Cheersies.
Cheers. Hold on.
Mm.
I am cheersing. I'm just putting my phone on silent because I had like 2 phone calls during our episode, and that was
Oh,
like,
did we?
it
Who's
was my
calling?
my mom just kept calling.
Oh, the creative one.
Everything, the creative one. Yeah. Well, she's asking for suggestions for the kids' Christmas. So I'm like, well, be creative, figure it out.
Yeah. We're going to start. This is the best chirp ever. Just be creative. Figure it out. Just go. Okay. Today I have a red. It's Cakebread.
Ooh.
Cakebread Cellars. It's a 2019 Cab Sauv. It's from Napa Valley. It is a more expensive one. We had opened it the other night when we had guests over, and so we went a little bigger. It's about $140 a bottle. Yeah, probably the priciest one we've had on the pod, and you
Was
don't
it
even enjoy it.
was it a Nick in LA?
Yeah, yeah.
Yes,
You got to
because
impress them.
Elaine's a red wine snob, isn't he?
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
100%. He even knows the glasses, and he's making Scott into one too. I'm like,
Oh
you
my.
don't get a B.
You don't get to be. Yeah.
No, that's not it. But it's really good. I personally love a New World, Napa Valley, New World. It's like more North American red. Cab Sauv is my favorite, as you know. I find it's really smooth. It has like a sweet smell finish.
Is it protein?
Very like cherry.
Oh, cherry. Look at her doing. She's like desperate not to read the fucking back
It's
of the
very
bottle.
approachable. Oh, that's a good one. I think it's amazing. I really, really enjoy it. Yeah, their first vintage, the winery, was 1973.
I'm just
Their
drinking
family
a cheap
believes
white.
a
If
great glass
anyone's
of wine is
interested.
best shared with good friends and fine foods. Well, I'm drinking alone right now. No.
Well, if anyone's interested, I'm just drinking a cheap white wine.
Is it
The
good?
usual. Yeah, I mean, it's one I've drunk before. Little Peller Estates, white, Riesling. I'm not going to read the back of the label because I'll
Yeah,
get
please don't.
snubbed for it. So Brittany's doing her absolute best not to read anything for this one. She really wants to show me up as a wine connoisseur, I think.
Listen, it's not that. I'm just trying to give the viewers what they want.
Give the viewer. We don't even know what they want. We don't
Whatever.
know.
My ranking for this is a solid 8.5.
Ooh, that's high for you.
I know. I really like it. But it's
You
also
should-
expensive, so it better be, or else I would never.
Yeah, I mean, if it wasn't great, you'd have to give it a really low ranking because who the hell would pay that much money?
Yeah. It was
For a
also
shite one.
featured in the top 23 Napa Valley Cabernet Sauvignon wines in
Oh,
Ontario
okay.
right now.
Oh, look at her
That's
reading
called
the back of the
Vivino app.
bottle.
No,
The Vino.
Vivino.
Okay, the Vino app.
Side
Sorry.
note, if no one has Vivino app, get it. It's so good.
Is it like what's the difference between just looking that up versus just like looking on? Well, I
You
guess
take a picture of the label and then it pulls up a ranking. So there's 675 ratings and it
Okay.
gives you a rating out of 5. And then it gives you all the tasting notes, people's comments, feedback, and it gives you like summary of highlights. It's really cool.
So you can really sound
Yeah, I
pretty
didn't use it for
profesh.
today, but I could.
You could sound pretty profesh if you
Yeah, like
actually
I could give you
did your
this taste
homework first.
characteristics on this red, or
What
it's
is
a bold red, semi-tannicky, more smooth than anything else, definitely on the dry side. And I would say it's more acidic in taste.
I don't know if that pulls me in. Oh, it's very acidic. Enjoy. Yeah.
Just trying to do my best here.
Like drinking a quart of vinegar. No, I'm just kidding.
No, it doesn't feel like that. But I mean, you leave the wine out too long, and boy, does that happen.
Yeah, no, disgusting. So what are you up to this week then, following our big holiday bonanza
Yeah.
over the last couple of weeks? What are you doing apart
My
from
parents are coming
detoxing?
out to visit us on Friday, which I'm really excited about.
Yeah, it's great.
And so that will be fun. And besides that, I just got a bunch of work, some golf. Um, yeah, that's about it. It's like pretty low key. Well, on Thursday, it's American Thanksgiving here. So this will be coming out after, but we're going to probably make like chili or something and just like hang out and watch some football. But
Okay, well that's fun. Yeah, normally your fam would do because there's like a load of football. Is it all just like is it Grey Cup or is it like
no, Grey Cup is today. It's the day we're recording this.
oh okay.
And yes, you're
Shows how much I know.
yeah. But no, American Thanksgiving, they have like 3 or 4 football games on. It's like a big day for the NFL.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, I know nothing.
Yeah.
But also like Black Friday deals, like Cyber
Yeah.
Monday. This is your time to get the goods for
I know.
Christmas. I'll tell you.
I've never been in the States for Black Friday. I don't know if I go out or
I think
I just buy online.
it's insane. It's meant to be insane, right? Like there's definitely deals to be had in person, but I think it's cutthroat.
Yeah, well, all the people I've asked, because I've asked a few Americans, and they're like, usually we go at like 4 a.m. and then we like get drunk at lunch and come home. And I'm like, oh, okay. Sounds fun.
What a tradition for
I
Black
know.
Friday.
I
Oh
know.
my word.
I was like, you obviously don't want to shop after you get drunk because then you probably buy all this random shit that you don't need. It's a sale, girl math.
No, they've just upped the prices and then put a little sale ticket on it
Exactly.
to make you feel good.
Oh
Yeah,
God.
that tends to be the case. So that's the thing that kind of
I don't think it's like that here. I think that's more in Canada on Boxing Day.
yeah, it drives me really nuts, eh? Because
Yeah.
it's so false. It's so false. I'm like, oh, that's not a deal. And it's like someone's end of stock clearance crap that is like no good anyways, just because you see it's like $4.99. Let me get 6 of them.
I'm
No, it's
surprised to
shit.
hear that from you though, because when there was 2 stores closing in the Plaster Orleans Mall, and you went there every day till it
Okay,
became like the dollar bin, and you
listen.
loved it.
Listen, okay, it's one thing when you get things for like $1 that are meant to be like 10 or $15. You got to keep going back. I mean, I got a lot of good little staple tops for the summer and whatnot. $1 each, of course. And like when what was it? When Le Chateau was going out of
Oh
business.
yeah, you bought every birthday present for like the next 2 years
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. They were selling off all their shoes, and
Yeah.
they're not amazing. Like they're not high end shoes, but they're decent quality shoes, like $100 a piece or whatever. They were selling them all for 10 flipping bucks.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's a
yeah, I
steal.
bought 8 or 9 pairs. Yeah, okay, I bought some of my friends' pairs, but like, why wouldn't you? You just got like $60 pairs of shoes. And then I was able to buy them other things too. But like, I mean, I bought loads. Like I kept going back. It was an addiction.
Yeah, I remember it.
But it
Fun.
was quality stuff. Like I got decent quality stuff. I didn't just buy cheap shite that is work
Well, I
bad.
think at the Le Chateau sale you did, I think at the Spark, what was
Was
the
it Forever 21?
no, it was a different one. It was like a fancy
Sirens.
Sirens, that was it. I don't think you got quality.
Okay, rude. Rude, first off. Like some of those little tank tops, little crop tops.
I
Like, I
mean,
mean,
you'll
I
wear
got
them
them
3
for a
times and they'll like fall apart in the wash.
I still have them, Brett. Still have them. We're a couple of them a couple
Okay.
of times so far.
Swallow my
For a
words.
dollar. Okay, people.
Is it eat
Let's
my
just
words?
say,
Swallow my words?
yeah, eat,
I
swallow.
think it's eat my
Yeah,
words.
both. You
Anyways.
could have both. Could go with both. Anyways, whatever. We can't all be multimillionaires.
Okay. Enough out of you.
Anywho,
And with that, we
uh,
drink. What do you have going on next week? Nothing?
nothing. Yeah, just my old boring suburban housewife duties. No, so I have parent teacher interviews. Going to
Oh,
have
how's
drinks
that
with your
gonna go?
mom for her birthday on Tuesday, so we're
Fun.
doing that. I got a couple of things going on in the evenings. this week that I need to take care of. Prepping. My in-laws are coming in a couple of weeks, so I gotta prep. Probably get some Christmas decorations up.
Yeah.
There's no time on the weekend to do it, so I'm gonna probably be doing some of that tomorrow night. But yeah, work, and blah blah.
More work.
Kids' birthday parties for the next couple of weekends coming up, like every weekend.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's gonna be
That's
fun.
a lot.
Yeah, it is.
Oh, the things that happen when you have kids, eh? Your life becomes
Yeah,
secondary.
just wait. Just you wait, my dear.
I'm lucky.
Yeah, I'm lucky. Yeah. On that note, I will just close
Yeah,
on
I
my
feel like our
sad,
whole
boring
like
life.
wine time went from like da 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 down to like dun dun.
Just
dun.
so boring. It's doom
Yeah.
and gloom, folks. It's winter.
I know.
I hate it.
Get your spark on and let's go sledding.
Yeah, but we're not quite there yet. But soon
Yeah.
we'll be there. We're excited for you to come and feel the snow on your tip of your nose, Brittany.
Yeah, I'm not excited for that,
Then
but
you
I will
can
do it.
shun it and be like,
Yeah.
I'm going back to Arizona where there's no snow. It's
Glorious.
just sand.
Okay, well, I love you guys. See you soon.
Okay.
And that's it. That's all.
And that's it. That's all, folks. Have a good day.
Cheers.
Cheers.